Oh yeah. You know what? Well, so for everybody out there, we met a few weeks ago on a rainy New York night, last minute. You texted me and you were like, "Hey, are you around to meet up?" It was probably one of my most favorite meetings because we didn't even know we were going to do it. It was last minute. We both said yes, met up at this Italian restaurant and then sat there and didn't stop talking for 2 hours.
Oh my gosh, I know. And it was amazing. It was perfect, spontaneous. And of course, the food was delicious. The company was even better.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way. So I'm excited to talk about so many different things with you, but you've got the books, you've got products, you've got so much incredible advice, and you really are the girlfriend doctor to so many women out there that just have a lot of questions throughout our lives, but at this point in our lives especially. But I want to talk about your story first because I think how you got here is really important to your messaging. Can you talk a little bit about that, of where you started and that kind of aha moment and the pivot that you took?
Yeah, absolutely. It started from, how they say there's an expression, your mess becomes your message. That certainly has been true for me. And my journey really, and my medical practice took a pivot when I was 39 years old. And I was diagnosed with infertility, secondary infertility, and early menopause. And I failed the highest doses of injectable fertility drugs. And I was devastated. Here I was, an OBGYN trained at one of the best institutions in the world, a focus on fertility in my practice. And I had, delivered 3 of my own babies. And then to be told there's no way, that's it, early menopause, and this is as good as it's going to get, and here's an antidepressant. And I was like, this just can't be right. And that started my journey. Looking for answers. And I was a researcher, Tamsen, before I went to medical school. I did physiology research with the U.S. Navy and drug metabolism after that. And so I knew there was there was that little voice inside me. And that's one thing. Women have such good intuition. Oh my gosh, trust your gut. When your body is telling you, no, that's not, this isn't the answer. There's another way. Hold on to that hope. And I did. And as a result of that, and a journey that took me around the world, working with healers, traditional healers from all over the world, reversed the early menopause that I had been diagnosed with, and became pregnant naturally, delivering a baby girl at age 41, the child I was told I would never be able to have. And that just transformed the way I approached medicine and I approached my patients. And I really hope to just inspire that hope. And always there's one more next right step you can take.
I mean, it really is unbelievable when you go back to saying trust your gut. That just applies to everything, but it's really at this time of life because you feel very unsure about a lot of things, right? And so I think you just do really have to be quiet for a minute and listen and hear what's being said inside, and listen to that little voice. And you're living proof of that in so many ways.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that I really try to inspire into my patients. Well, what does your gut tell you? What does your spirit tell you? To really be in tune with that. And the benefit of midlife transition, menopause, I will say menopause is mandatory and natural, suffering is optional. The benefit of the shift in our physiology and our rewiring is that we can have higher cognitive function, higher spiritual connection. And, that's the wise women of society really manifest in the second spring of our lives.
It really is wonderful. And you've certainly turned the second spring into something that everybody can be a part of. You've got courses, you've got books, you've got products, free resources on your website. So we'll make sure and we connect everybody to those because I think they're just so essential to see. But I want to talk a little bit, I want to go into your book, but I want to talk about some of the products you have because you have some really specific products for things that we all deal with, whether it's dryness, whether it's, our diet, which is huge during this time. And I think that those are in detoxing. Can you talk a little bit about what you're offering and what you think is most important if people are at the beginning of this journey, right? Because we don't just start in menopause, we start in perimenopause, and we're teaching more women about that. But, what is important for people to start doing for themselves before they jump into hormones?
Yeah, and there are so many things that we can do, just part of our lifestyle. And that's why when I talk about my approach, the Ketogreen lifestyle. It's really more than a diet plan. And there are a few key things that when I understood the physiology of the hormonal changes that are happening as we age, one specifically becoming more insulin resistant, and cortisol's natural increase, which also creates elevated glucose and increases our risk for diabetes. And those of us, myself included, that have had, like may have a diagnosis of PCOS, or I like to say warrior princess genes, survivor genes, then
Yes.
you're going to become more insulin resistant as we age. And so this is where intermittent fasting, breaking up with the toxic ex-boyfriend sugar, really got to cut out sugar and reduce our carbs and pay attention to that, and no more snacking. So 2 or 3 meals, no snacking. I've encouraged women to really break fast by 10 or 11 a.m. Really depends on your schedule, but for most of us, that's a really good time. And that way we're finishing dinner earlier and not eating so late in the evening, although we did that.
I know. Well, that's okay. Sometimes I work nights, so sometimes I forgive myself for it, but
absolutely.
I try to stay on that schedule as best I can, so at least I know these are the times that I'm eating, and these are the times that I'm not eating, and giving my body a bit of a break.
Yeah. So exactly. And that flexibility. And I think it's good to have that flexibility. We get so stuck, and this is the way we have to do things. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my recent book, Menopause, is because there are different pauses that we can take, and there's magic in the pauses, just like menopause in and of itself. We can find the magic in this pause.
And I know, if you're listening on podcast, you can't see this, but if you watch the video, I just have to say, you have these gorgeous pictures. I want to eat all these healthy foods. This makes me want to eat healthy food. And I actually, one of my favorite parts is the menopause around the world. You talk about menopause in different cultures and in different countries. And I just think I don't know. It just made me feel like, okay, we're all going through, I know we repeat that over and over. We're all going through it, but we really are. And to see how other cultures deal with it. Were there any that were particularly interesting to you? We've both talked about our background, and being Middle Eastern, those are the foods I gravitate toward, which thank goodness there are a lot of those in the book. Mm-hmm. But are there any in particular that resonated with you as you learn more about what happens around the world?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, just thinking of Middle Eastern, my kefta and tabbouleh, and because that is so medicinal. But one of the things with the kefta is that we put parsley and spices and herbs and, into the kefta. So it's like a sneaky way to get really good nutrients into your body. I think one of the things that when I, explored menopause around the world was just understanding that the Japanese use the word konenki, which means second spring. And I thought that is just such a better word. That is just such a better word. So I'd like to just convert the way we have dialogue around menopause to acknowledge the transition, no different than puberty. It is a transition. So it is what is again, where is the magic in it? And to really find that. So I think that I saw that in their verbiage around menopause. And then just the lack of limitation on physical activity and the role of the matriarch in many of these societies, the powerful women of the house, of the community, and really that resonated such truth with me.
It really does, and that speaks to everybody, right? I want to ask you, so you wrote this book. You've also written the Hormone Fix, and I know that we talked a little bit when we met about hormones and the different kind of hormones. And I get a lot of these questions on TikTok, and I always try to defer to a doctor because I obviously don't know anything close to what you do. But when people talk about these different hormones, can you just kind of define each one of them, whether we're talking about compounded or we're talking about bioidentical? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about what's healthier versus not healthier, or safer versus not safer. Can you just go into that as an expert? Because I'm curious to see how you say it, and then I'll probably repeat it 1,000 times.
Good. Because we have to educate the community, and we have to really understand the dialogue around it. It's confusing for the professionals, the prescribers, sure, right? And let alone for us going through menopause or in general. So we talk about bioidentical hormones, and now the word body identical hormones are kind of being used interchangeably. but to say that body, is identical to what your body is producing, so bioidentical or body identical. Now, there are prescription estrogens like estradiol, that is one of our body bioidentical hormones. We'll add more terminology here, but it is a bioidentical hormone that we can use that can be taken orally, or a patch or a gel, can be compounded, put into troches, which are like lozenges, and then you can combine that when you're compounding a bioidentical formula with a bioidentical progesterone, DHEA, or testosterone, these different hormones, but that look like what our body makes and are received by the receptors as similar. Conversely, there are synthetic hormones and combinations, like, for example, Premarin, which is a combination of a pregnant mare's urine. So there's over 30 estrogens in that, not, innate to our own woman's physiology.
Right.
And then there are progestins, which are synthetic. And the safest progesterone is bioidentical progesterone. That is hands down the safest, shown in research over and over and over again. In fact, in a 50,000 person study by Dr. Fournier, was first published in 2008, looked at bioidentical progesterone compared to different forms of progestins. There are different forms, some worse than others. And it showed the bioidentical progesterone did not increase breast cancer, but progestins, all forms, did. And the medroxyprogesterone form was the worst. And that's the form that was used in the Women's Health Initiative study that shut down hormone replacement for women, for so many women in 2002 in this country, which is one of the, it's a travesty. It was really, for women, it set back everything. Everything and
everything. Well, but it put that fear in us that we don't even know where it came from. I mean, I honestly don't know how I knew that, or thought that. I don't even know how I knew. I didn't know about the study. I just knew the information that came out of it, right? And so did everybody else, and nobody really knows where that came into their head, but we do know, right?
Yep. And there's fear. And now there's different forms of estrogen that are safer. Like I'd like to use especially after age 50, or if there's history of cardiovascular disease, I avoid oral estrogens, because oral estrogens can increase your risk of blood clots. Again, that was shown in the study. And so risk of stroke, risk of blood clots. Why do that if there's a safer way? Right. So I think that's always looking at what's the safest form and what's the safest way to get it into your body. And so and also, I always talk about, I'm a sexual health expert, so clitoris to anus, the most important anatomy of our body, it's very vascular, so you can use hormones topically there that really are well absorbed and can improve sexual function, bladder function, just name it.
Right. So if somebody comes to you and says, like, look, I want to do hormones, but I'm scared and I don't know what to do you usually guide them to one or another? Or really it's bio-individuality? Is that what it is? It's just based on everybody's different.
That's a great question. And I always start with my magnus opus, because again, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. And that's something I recognized over and over again. You asked me about some of the products. One of the ones, that combination that helped me, was the one that I created. I call it Mighty Maca Plus. It's maca and 30 superfoods. And recently, a woman age 46 had started using my products, following the Ketogreen way. And she goes, I was starting my menopausal journey, and then all of a sudden, those 13 weeks with no period, lo and behold, she was pregnant. So, but like ovarian, I know that's such a scary thing for so many of us, but ovarian function is a marker of longevity. So if we can reverse the hands of time, we are improving our longevity. I mean, I went from 39 diagnosed with early menopause, reversed it at 41, was in the throes again at 48, and finally at 56 with a 14-year-old, I'm telling you, gosh, and postmenopausal. But what a lesson to learn. So each person is individual, and you've got to empower your body to detox hormones really well, reduce the amount of endocrine disruptors that we're getting that are affecting our body's own natural hormones. So if we get exposed to estrogen mimickers, and that can be from plastic bottles, from the receipts that we touch, from cosmetics that we're putting on our skin, then our body's not going to make as much of our own hormones. So we need to remove those, open the receptor sites, and there's many pieces to that puzzle. But then using replenishment model of hormone replacement, it's what I call it, hormone replenishment versus replacement. I want to honor what my body's design is, not suppress its own function. And I think
what
that's
it could
where
naturally do, right?
Yeah, and it's powerful.
It really is. So I want to talk about your story, because you started products, but you were in a place where you weren't sure what to do at one point. And I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that, but if you are, I think it's important, because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are like, what's coming up next for me? I don't know what happens in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And I think there was some point there where you weren't sure what you were doing next. And now all of a sudden you've got a product line, you've got books, you've got, you're at conferences everywhere. Can you talk a little bit about that stage in that point of your life?
Oh my gosh, there were so many of those. Hold on. The one that comes to like the biggest transition point was like after being burnt out from my medical practice, and I had clients came to me from all over the world. I just completely burnt out, and I knew that I had to put family and God and family first. And my ex-husband had a traumatic brain injury, so it was all up to me. And I closed my medical practice because I'm all or none. I'm just passionate. I love my patients. I love what I do. I love my family. And at that point was going, income stops, expenses stay the same. So was really struggling. But my patients were calling me and they're like, Dr. Ann, no one will give us your compounded creams. We need help. And so I'm like, I'm going to come up with something over the counter that you won't need a prescription for. And I remember summer of 2017, Tamsen, it wasn't that long ago. I'm taking my daughters camping over July 4th weekend. And really we were camping. So I was renting out my Airbnb, my home to, pay the mortgage. And I just was so passionate about, number one, my family, but number two, helping women. I didn't want them to suffer like my mom suffered or like I suffered. And I wanted to create something that this is something that will help them. I also, with my program, the Ketogreen way, here's something else that can really help you. And sexual health is necessary for optimal health. I 100% believe that. And we, pleasure and connection and intimacy and healthy relationships is so tied into our sexual connection and intimacy, that aspect. So that's when I had created Julva and had brought it to market, poured everything into it. So that's why, one of those things. And then it just took off. And so it was, and I just keep talking about it because again, I didn't create a product to, I never imagined. I am a clinician. I am a doctor. I am also a scientist. And I want natural solutions because without them, I couldn't do what I do.
Sure.
So that started the entire product line. And then I went to of course, the lower lips. So we say at the Girlfriend Doctor, we take care of your lips above and below your hips. So my Julva clitoris to anus, because that is so critical. Right. And then upper lip cream, and now a hair formula. And then my Mighty Maca Plus adaptogenic detoxifying formula that is foundational. I mean, we just hear so many great reviews. And my daughter, just to tell you, because I'm, my daughter's at high school and she's like, Mom, my friend Kaylee's not sick. I'm going to take her some Mighty Maca. Is that okay? I'm like, her friend Kaylee was sick. And so she's like, I'm going to take her some Mighty Maca. Is that okay? I'm like, of course. So that tells you if your 14-year-old daughter is giving it to her friends. I mean, that's
well, powerful. I want to go over the Julva because I want to talk. I told you the story. I said I was scared to tell you the story when I met with you, but I had to. So you had sent me. I love
this story.
You had sent me some products, and do you have the two containers? Because I think it'll be easier to see, but I'll describe it too. They basically are like lip glosses. You take the top off, you squeeze it out, something comes out. It's very pretty. It's pink, and one is one way, and one is the other direction. So one has one is has the top, right? The top on the top and the top on the bottom.
Julva lip duo.
The lip duo. So I had them on my makeup table and I was like, oh, it's great. I grabbed a lip gloss. It was great. I loved it. And then the next time I'm like, oh, there's two. Well, maybe it's a different flavor. And I grabbed that, not paying attention because I'm always in a rush and always teaches you not to rush. And I put this other one on. I was like, this is a different consistency. I don't know. This feels really, it's like kind of creamy and different. And a few days I used it. And then finally I look at the container. I can barely see anything, so I put my little peepers on and I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't even for these lips. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. So, but you said it was okay.
Yeah.
You said I was just extra moisturized.
Oh,
but I thought you were so
good.
gracious about the story because I thought, well, I'm sure it's not the first time she's heard it.
Oh no. In fact, when I created Julva, the original formula, I started using it on the lipstick bleed lines that I was having.
Oh, okay,
because I stopped Botox and filler and I was committed to doing things naturally. And I would tell my audience, I'm like, just use Julva on the lips.
Wait, did you stop Botox and filler? You look so good.
I did. I stopped. It's like 7 years
awesome.
ago. Yeah.
That's wow. Okay,
Yeah.
You're my new hero.
Oh my
heroine.
gosh. But there's times, like I get weak sometimes.
I hear you.
But
I hear you.
So I told my clients, you use the Julva on your lips too. They're like, oh, Dr. Anna, I can't do that. It's for down there. And I'm like, really, it's fine. And then I created
Tamsen does.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Tamsen does it. You can use it. You can use either formula anywhere you want it.
I've been your guinea pig tester.